If you're just starting your journey for the first time in the Lands Between in 2023, or you've been thinking about starting a new playthrough with a different build, knowing the best weapons early on can help immensely. Today we're going to be taking a look at 8 weapons that you can get early on in your playthrough to jumpstart you on your way, or even use them to claim the title of Elden Lord. These weapons can be found right in Limgrave as well as the Weeping Peninsula, in case you don't want to outrun your headlights and advance a few side quests prematurely. If you enjoy the content on the channel, dropping a like really helps out, and for more videos like this, you can click the subscribe button as well. So let's get ready to hunt down some cold steel, tell Melina the pen isn't mightier than a rusty anchor, and get after it. If you want to channel your inner Darth Maul and adapt to a stylish, quick-hitting DPS build, the Twinblades are one of the most solid overall options you can pick up early on without venturing into far-off lands after opening the doors to Limgrave. Because of their fast-hitting nature and their high attack rating, Twinblades are great for quickly building up status effects. You can actually pick this weapon up from a chest located about a 9 iron away from the starting location at the first steps. As you can see from the map footage, we'll be heading to the outskirts of the Dragonburnt ruins. You'll come across a broken down building where the walls are just a bit too high to jump over on your own, but the jump can be accomplished once you unlock your Spirit Steed Torrent. Once inside, you can head down the stone staircase into a long forgotten basement where you can open up a chest that houses the Twinblades. This simple and yet finely crafted weapon not only looks cool, but it scales with strength and dexterity as well. While it's extremely versatile and can be wielded with a single hand, its untapped strength lies within its dual-handed attacks. If Twinblades aren't really your thing and you want something that sends a clear message with a single hit, then the Greataxe is one of the best early game options. When it comes to heavy hitting strength builds, this fierce axe can clear a path through large groups of enemies with some devastating knockdown power. As you can see from the map footage, it can be located close by the Waypoint ruins right in Limgrave, although there is a bit of a catch. The chest containing the axe is located on the back of a large stagecoach being pulled by a pair of massive trolls and escorted by a fair amount of soldiers. You can either go full send and clear the area, or just stop the convoy by hitting one of the trolls and jump on the back of the wagon to quickly grab the axe before being decisively engaged. As far as weapons go, this one might not be overly fancy and require a fair amount of strength to wield right out of the gate, but it boasts the highest base damage per swing out of all the weapons in its class. Next, we'll be taking a look at the dagger Reduvia that has the potential to dish out a metric ton of damage when used in combination with a build that revolves around dexterity and arcane. Its unique weapon skill that can only be found on the blade itself is the Reduvia Blood Blade that sends concentrated bursts of blood that cause hemorrhage. If a bleed build is what you're revolving your character around, this dagger is a solid early option to apply some devastating blood loss to your enemies. This dagger isn't overly hard to find, but you'll have to pry it from the cold dead hands of a rather tough enemy. As you can see from the map footage, this invasion takes place near the Murkwater Cave, where you'll come face to face with Bloody Finger Nergis, who's just one of the many bloody fingers you'll be invaded by. Nergis is extremely fast and tends to be all over you like white on rice, a glass of milk, and a paper plate in a snowstorm. But after fighting with him for a bit, the Bloody Finger Hunter Yura will come to your rescue and you'll be rewarded the dagger. Reduvia scales with strength, dexterity, and arcane, and applies the hemorrhage or blood loss effect passively. Hemorrhage occurs when the amount of blood loss becomes higher than the target's robustness, causing immense damage after consuming the effect. Next up is a Soul Series fan favorite, the Uchigatana, which is a rather elegant weapon for a more civilized age. And just like in previous FromSoft games, this katana comes in pretty handy in a fight. Its slashing and piercing make it extremely versatile, and the unsheathed skill is amazing when it comes to slicing apart enemies with authority and then shaking their blood off your blade. As early game goes, it's actually the starting weapon for the Samurai class, but not to worry, if you choose a different character class, it can be picked up with a little spelunking in Limgrave. As you can see from the map footage, it can be picked up very early on in the Death-Touched Catacombs, which rest within Stormhill in western Limgrave. Filled with the stench of death and quite a few skeletons, the Death-Touched Catacombs is a very small dungeon area that's pretty quickly and easily navigated. After opening the doors, it's actually just a quick run to the katana, and as you can see from the game footage, you'll head past the first site of grace and turn left where you'll encounter a few skeletons as you clear through the dungeon. It is important to note that after defeating the skeletons, you'll have to follow up and crush their soul so they remain permanently dead and don't rise from their grave again. After moving down the staircase to your left, there is a small corridor tucked away underneath the arches. After taking that tunnel to its end, you'll make your first left and enter the second floor of a chamber where you'll find the sword's final resting place. Straight from the land of reeds, this katana scales primarily with strength and dexterity and comes complete with a passive bleed buildup of 45. When infused with a heavy upgrade, it'll receive A-tier scaling for strength starting at plus 23, which makes it a great weapon for either a pure strength build or a pure dexterity build. Next is quite arguably one of the best curved greatswords in the game that you might not want to so easily relinquish once you swing it a few times. The Bloodhounds Fang is just one of those weapons that you can plug and play into any melee style character since it was designed with both strength and dexterity in mind. This weapon is a powerhouse of brutal attacks that's capable of reducing the population of any standing dungeon to 0. This weapon isn't overly hard to find since it rests in the hands of the Bloodhound Knight Darrowil, who you'll come across locked away in the Forlorn Hound Everjail, and as you can see from the map footage, it's located in the southern end of the zone right before crossing into the Weeping Peninsula. Once at the magical prison, you'll be prompted to enter its confines, where you may or may not have a tough fight ahead of you. If you've been following Blyde's questline up until this point, you'll see his gold summon sign on the ground within the inner ring of the stone circle. Blyde actually makes this fight a piece of cake, to the point where you could probably just sit back and watch Blyde deliver an epic beating, but we won't let him do all the heavy lifting. After all, critical hits are extremely satisfying. Once you finish the fight, you'll receive the Bloodhound's Fang and be teleported back up top to continue your journey. What makes this greatsword just a bit overpowered for early game is the mobility that comes along with its sheer power. And as of patch 1.09, the speed, range, recovery time, and guard counter speed of all greatswords was increased. Next up is the Rusted Anchor, which, believe it or not, is actually a viable early weapon for those going for that pure strength build, and you won't have to get underway on a 3-hour tour to find it. Whether one-handed or two-handed, this weapon melts through your enemies, and even though it technically belongs to the Greataxe family, it actually deals pierce damage, which makes the Spear Talisman a great pair for this weapon. As you can see from the map footage, the Rusted Anchor can be found in the Morn Tunnel that's a small dungeon tucked away within a draw on the southern coast of the Weeping Peninsula. The dungeon's location is pretty far off the beaten path and can be fairly difficult to find if you aren't really searching every corner of the zone for it. After hopping on Torrent, you can ride west for a bit from the Castle Morn Rampart side of Grace, where you'll run into a small shack after about 300 meters. From the shack, you'll float north just a bit and then back to the west until you reach a cliff face with large protruding gravestones. From here, you'll need to gingerly hop down the cliff face via the gravestones until you reach the ground. It is important to note that there is a scarab at the bottom that'll drop the lightning spell once killed, but it's surrounded by bats. Once you're situated, you can continue north off the drop-off, and once safely at the bottom, you'll see the firelight at the cave entrance. Morn Tunnel is yet another small dungeon area that isn't overly difficult to navigate and shouldn't take you very long to face tank your way through it to the boss area. At the very end, you'll face down a fairly weak mini-boss, the Scaly Misbegotten, whose attacks are very slow and heavily telegraphed. Once defeated, the rust-covered anchor is all yours to wield, because not all treasure is silver and gold. In terms of physical damage, this weapon isn't the highest, but this Greataxe deals the same type of damage commonly associated with thrusting weapons or spears. The so what of that is, you'll often be dealing counterattack damage while using an aggressive playstyle, which is dealt when you hit an enemy in the middle of an attack animation. Counterattack adds 30% extra pierce damage, and it can be combined with the extra 15% that the Spear Talisman provides. When combining counterattack with a heavy axe moveset, you'll be turning all your enemies into a giant earthworm playground in no time. When combined with blood affinity, nothing says just stand there and bleed like the Bandits' curved swords, which can be the catalyst that starts you down the early road of piecing together a rather filthy bleed build. When dual wielded, these fast, light, and reliable weapons are reminiscent of the Dark Souls 3 mercenary Twinblades, providing a pretty high base damage as well as low weight and the low stat requirements of 11 strength and 13 dex. These swords can be farmed early on in the Weeping Peninsula, and as you can see from the map footage, your target location will be a small cemetery right outside of the Church of Pilgrimage. From the side of Grace, all you'll need to do is run a short distance into the graveyard, kill the skeletal bandit, and rinse and repeat the process until you get the sword to drop. The only drawback to farming these swords is that the drop rate is abysmal at about 2%, and you don't have to be Bill Nye the Science Grunt to figure out that it may take a while for you to get your greedy loot mittens on 2 of them. When combined with the blood affinity, these weapons actually receive C-tier scaling for strength once upgraded, making this a completely viable option for a build that revolves around strength and arcane. If you're looking for an early blood affinity to slap onto your blades, you'll come across the Bloody Slash Art of War in Limgrave's Fort Height, after waffle stomping the knight on the 2nd floor, of course. Next up is the Grafted Blade Greatsword, which is yet another weapon you'll come across in the Weeping Peninsula, and although it requires an extremely high strength to wield, it's totally worth it, since after patch 1.09, the speed, range, and recovery times for all greatswords was improved. This weapon also comes standard with the Ash of War Oath of Vengeance, which boosts all of your attributes by 5 for 60 seconds and your poise for 5 seconds. So if you find yourself vastly outnumbered, swear an oath on the greatsword and vengeance will be granted. This weapon can be located in Castle Morn, which as you can see from the map footage rests comfortably on the very southern tip of the Weeping Peninsula. In order to get your hands on the sword, you'll have to find and defeat the boss of the castle. The path to the boss is reached from the behind the castle site of grace, which is found after dropping down from a broken section of wall. You'll have to use your extreme parkour skills to jump your way down a series of landings, and the sneakiest way in will be to jump across a small gap to a neighboring rooftop and jump through a hole in the wooden lattice. There will be quite a few enemies on your path to the boss, but they aren't a big deal to clear out of the way. It is important to note that you can also pick up the Twinblade talisman at the top of the tower at the end of the bridge. After mopping up the enemies on the bridge, you'll jump down to a rooftop and continue your descent by jumping down a series of ledges along the cliff face until you reach another stone rooftop with a large opening. The descent through the opening presents a few challenges. The first being that you'll have to skillfully drop down to a series of beams, and the second is that your final drop will land you directly into the center of a rat's nest, literally. If you aren't prepared for the ambush, the success of making it out without being staggered and becoming rat food is pretty minimal. The way to the boss gate from here is pretty self-explanatory, and once you prepare yourself and pass through the yellow fog, you'll be greeted with a boss that's extremely fast and deals quite a bit of physical damage through a series of horizontal slashes and jump attacks. Once you finally bring him down, you're awarded the Grafted Blade Greatsword for all your hard work. Being a pure strength weapon, this sword comes stock with C-tier scaling and strength, but it does have a bit of minor scaling with dexterity. With Oath of Vengeance attached, this weapon is great for dealing damage to large bosses in the early game and is remarkably strong for an early game weapon. Well folks, it looks like we're coming to the end of another Elden Ring video as we continue on to Caelid to bring you all the best early toys from Limgrave's neighboring zone. We would like to take this time to personally thank you for watching, and if you're new to the channel and haven't done so already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on any new mid-40s gamer content. And if you aren't too busy wondering why the sky is blue, leave us a comment in the comment section and let us know how we're doing. We would also like to give a shout out to one of our subscribers, Trevor Howard, who suggested we put this video together. So until next time, just remember, you can draw a line 35 miles long using one pencil. The apples you buy in the supermarket could be up to a year old, and as always, good hunting.